I want to talk today about the Republicans vying for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination. Let's start with some news from this past weekend. Former Vice President Mike Pence, who hasn't announced yet but hasn't ruled out a 2024 run, said that, quote, Trump was wrong leading up to January 6th, and his words were, quote, reckless. This is arguably the strongest criticism of Trump from any Republican who is potentially running in 2024. Why are Republicans who are either in the race or thinking about joining the race so hesitant to criticize Trump over January 6th?
Well, as we know, January 6th exposed a lot of divisions within the Republican Party. The GOP knows that Trump still has a strong base of supporters, and many of those supporters believe that the election was stolen from him, and they were therefore justified in storming the Capitol. I think Kevin McCarthy and his reaction to January 6th is a prime example of this. You know, in the days after January 6th, he held Trump accountable on the House floor, saying that he bore responsibility for the insurrection. However, he later voted against Trump's impeachment. He voted against certifying the results of the election, and he led the effort to oust Liz Cheney as GOP conference chair, which was in retaliation to her speaking out against Trump and, placing blame on him for the insurrection. And McCarthy did all of this because he knew that his path to the speaker's gavel was dependent both on Republicans reclaiming the majority in the midterm election last year and the support of Trump loyalists in Congress like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar. And so I think this entire saga with McCarthy really shows why the GOP is so beholden to why January 6th is such a sensitive issue for them. And, in districts like Gosar's and Greene, the majority of voters do still believe that the election was stolen from Trump.
Pence was obviously Trump's running mate just a few years ago, and how have things changed, especially with January 6th in the mix there? So what has the response been to Pence's remarks regarding Trump and January 6th?
So Pence made these remarks at the Gridiron dinner in Washington on Saturday, and this is a gathering. It's primarily for media, and lawmakers tell jokes. It's supposed to be a very lighthearted event. So I wasn't there, and as I said, this was a private event but Politico had a great scoop on the inside details, and I think that a lot of people were surprised to hear this tone of sobriety at an event, as I said, is supposed to be lawmakers making self-deprecating jokes and whatnot. But the other reaction was speculation as to whether Pence was playing into the crowd that was full of DC liberals and journalists, or if he would continue this narrative on the campaign trail. And, Politico also noted that he is defying the DOJ's subpoena for him to testify in its investigation of January 6th. So it appears he's kind of playing both sides of the coin here. So it could have been an attempt to butter up the DC press corps. So we'll see what he does from here.
I do want to continue talking about Trump. He was largely panned for a red wave that really never came to fruition for the midterms. It was more of a red trickle for the House, and the Democrats kept control of the Senate. He also has a few investigations and lawsuits swirling about him. So how is he still able to garner such support?
So Trump himself has not been convicted or found guilty in any of these investigations. The New York Attorney General's office did land a tax fraud conviction against the Trump organization in January that largely surrounded his company paying executives and untaxable gifts and home furnishings and other things like that. So I think that that's kind of lost on voters in terms of, Trump is the politician versus Trump is the businessman. There's an interesting CNN poll out today that my colleague Allison Durkee wrote about that I think really speaks to how beholden that some Republicans are to Trump. 63% of Republicans still believe that Biden did not win the election, but of those, only 52% believe there is solid evidence that he did not. And what's interesting is in October, the same percentage of Republicans believed that Trump was the true winner of the election, but a larger share believed that there was solid evidence. So the poll numbers suggest, the decline in the belief that there was solid evidence without any decline in the belief that Trump won the election shows that a lot of Republicans are basing this notion on suspicion alone, and no evidence is actually going to change their minds that Trump was the winner.